The Flames have quite the decision to make when it comes to Dustin Wolf. Does Vladar stay or does Marky go?
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I'm your host, Jess Belmosto, and today we are here to talk about the mini goalie controversy, potentially in Calgary. We're going to talk about Dustin Wolf and the potential movement for Dan Vladar and what the Flames could possibly do with Jacob Markstrom's contract. But before we dive into that, please remember to subscribe to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts. Free 99 everywhere and on YouTube as well. So let's just jump right into it. Is Dustin Wolf ready for the NHL? He has played in 108-ish regular season games in the AHL, which is less than you typically see for a goalie that is making the jump from the AHL to the big leagues. But I feel like Dustin Wolf is an anomaly. He is one of those players that he was probably sitting up by the time he was 4 months old. He was probably just absolutely ahead of the game here, right? He's also won every award possible in his first 2 years in the AHL, and he's doing great in the postseason so far. I mean, he did get pulled that one game, and he's only been pulled twice in his AHL career, which, I mean, considering what else the Flames have been dealing with, I consider that pretty good. I really think that Dustin Wolf should be seeing time at the NHL level next year. And I don't mean consistent time, like how they've tried to integrate Vladar into once a week. I don't think that might be the move for Dustin Wolf yet, but I do think he really does need to be with the NHL club because, Daryl Sutter said himself, it's not just about going out and playing on the ice. It's about finding guys to emulate and to kind of look up to and to shadow and to kind of have them take you under their wing almost. And I feel like, I don't necessarily think Markstrom would lose his job to Dustin Wolf. I really don't think that would be the case because I don't think that the Flames would bench Markstrom at $6.5 million. But, the Flames have had their struggles with goaltending. This is nothing new. This isn't anything that, I'm sure if someone woke up from a coma today, a lifelong Flames fan, they would probably say, have the Flames done anything about their goaltending? And we would have to tell them, unfortunately, not really. But this thing here is they just can't continue to make the same mistakes. They cannot afford to, especially with ownership and leadership, interim leadership coming out and saying, we're not rebuilding. Our goal is the playoffs. We're not really retooling even. We're going for the playoffs. So you have to look at that and say, well, what's going to be different? Because I don't know if the roster is constructed in a way where you're going to get the best results out of your players. And on top of that, Markstrom has a full no movement clause for the remaining 2 years of his contract. He's had his entire contract. It's on Cap Friendly if you're ever interested in taking a look at some of those contracts and breakdowns, and it's very helpful. Great resource. But trading Vladar also puts you in a not so good position too, because when Markstrom's contract is up in 2 years, then what? It's just a temporary fix, okay? It is a temporary fix, and there's nothing easy. To me, it doesn't feel like there's any easy way to navigate this. I feel like the Flames absolutely got a steal with Vladar, and it would be foolish to trade him. But at the same time, you can't move Markstrom, and can you afford to let Wolf stay in the AHL maybe one more year, and to see how things are. These are all conversations that need to be had internally throughout the course of the summer. So there is a plan. There's a strong possibility that Vladar is not on the roster next year. I don't know why you would trade him. And we're going to kind of talk more about that coming up next, or coming up towards the end of the show, actually. Just because, you aren't solving anything for the long term. But then at the same time, what is this new leadership group's goal? Are they just looking at short term, or are they looking long term? So we will just have to see. There are a million questions really heading into the off-season free agency trade time with the Flames in general, but also, of course, the goalie situation as well. But coming up next, we're going to take a look at Markstrom and why moving on from him has its pros and cons. And before we do that, though, I do want to take a quick second to talk to you about our friends at Birddogs. Birddogs are a very comfortable, very versatile, and just workout short, casual short. I quite enjoy them for when I'm walking around and just lounging around the house and maybe reading out on the balcony and it's warm out, but I really don't want to put on jean shorts. I want to be comfortable, but it's too warm for sweatpants. So I put on my Birddogs, and of course I take full advantage of my Birddogs tumbler as well. And you can also take full advantage of your Birddog tumbler and the Birddog shorts as well. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL, and when you enter promo code LockedOnNHL, you get a free tumbler. The shorts come in a bunch of different colors. You can get 5-inch, 9-inch, and I think there's even a shorter length than the 5. Then maybe there's a 3-inch. Let me know if you get the 3-inch. But in all seriousness, head on over to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL and enter code LockedOnNHL so you can get your Birddogs and, of course, your tumbler today. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me on today's episode of Locked On Flames. You can follow me on Twitter at Jess Belmosto. I remember when Jacob Markstrom was signed and thinking, this could go bad. This could go very bad. He was 29, 30 when he signed this contract. So he was, we talk about all the time on the show how you kind of are on the wrong side of 30. You're at the end of your career, the tail end of your career, really rounding third, if you will, once you turn 29, 30 years old. So it's very, especially with goalies, goalies don't always go out with grace. We've seen it a million times with goaltenders. They are very set in their ways, and they're just again, it's something else we've talked about. You cannot predict and, really do anything with you just can't successfully measure goaltending metrics and predictions, because there's just no way to predict what a goaltender would. If you told me that Sergei Bobrovsky would have the playoff run that he's having, I would laugh. I would say, why is he even playing? It makes no sense. But here we are, and the Eastern Conference Finals are on right now, and he's having himself a night. And it's one of those things where I don't think your goalie should be your most expensive player. Obviously, Markstrom is not, but it's a very expensive contract to number one, to take on, to sign, and you know what you're getting yourself into, right? And with him having a full no movement clause through all 6 years, you're not moving him. You cannot move him. So the Flames are not buying out Jacob Markstrom. I think that would be absolutely foolish. Just let him go with grace. Let him sit on the bench. Dustin Wolf start. Dan Vladar start. Whoever, whatever the case may be. But you're not moving that contract unless he waives his no movement clause. But I don't think he would. I find it very hard to see that happening. I think that he's comfortable in Calgary, and I think, he knows what he can do, and managing his game time and just the load management stuff is going to have to be the way to go. You're not paying him to back up. You're not paying him $6.5 million to back up. I say that, but then I also remember that Sergei Bobrovsky has been warming a bench for $10.5 million as well. So, I guess really anything's possible, but I don't see Jacob Markstrom as being the kind of player that is going to just sit there and let that happen. I think that he is going to just drive himself into the ground, like we saw in that 63 start season. Yes, that was so unhealthy and so bad for Markstrom. He had a fantastic season, but has he recovered? Have we seen anything that's even a semblance of what we saw during that fantastic run? No, we haven't. And I don't think it's fair to him to put this expectation of him, you need to go out there and win every single game. You need to go out there. You have to start 60 games or 55, 56 games. It would be a great way for Dustin Wolf to integrate into the NHL and see consistent ice time, but I don't know if he's ready. That this is the other question. Is Dustin Wolf ready? And, at the same time, you don't want to hinder his development, but you also don't want to rush it. And you also don't want to rush your starting goalie out the door either, because we could be looking at a whole nother situation in 2 years if the Flames move on from Vladar. And we are going to talk about that next. But before we do that, I do want to take a quick moment to talk to you about eBay Motors. eBay Motors is your one-stop shop for all of your car parts, motorcycle parts, whatever you need. And with eBay Motors, it's all about getting the right fit at the right price the first time around. And the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check mark to know if the part will fit or your money back. And just add your ride. It's that simple. So eBay Motors has over 122 million parts to choose from. You'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when all the parts are guaranteed. Get the right price, the right fit, and the right price on ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And thanks, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you're getting your podcast. Dan Vladar is like the most appetizing appetizer or entree on the menu if you're like in the market for a goaltender, right? He has a very team-friendly deal. He has cap hit of $4.4 million over the next 2 years, so 2.2 this upcoming October and then the following. But he plays well. He is a good goaltender. We have seen this last season. Again, I really don't think you can use last season as a true metric for him because it just was not a good year for anyone. Let's be honest here, right? So he came up in one of the better goalie development systems through the Boston Bruins organization. He was in line to be the next starter after Tuukka Rask left. And then Jeremy Swayman kind of came in and kind of bumped him out of there and said, bloop, hey, I'm taking that job. And, forced Don Sweeney's hand and Brad Treliving, don't mind if I do. And he did a great job with that trade and with that extension. So is it worth moving on from him? I don't know. What's good is you can probably get a solid return for him. He's still young, has a decent, cap hit, decent deal, decent contract. But what happens? What happens when Markstrom's contract is up in 2 years? You're just gonna leave Dustin Wolf out there and just continue to shop around goalies? I feel like that's an organizational failure. There has just been constant turnover in goalies, and I understand that position does change a lot, but I feel like even the Flames have just had a lot of turnover there, and you kind of owe it to your starting goaltender to allow them to have a stable, steady backup goalie. But I'm not a fan of trading him. I think that trading Vladar could open up a big can of worms. I think that it could create further problems down the road, because what happens if the goalie market in two summers from now is crap? What happens if Jacob Markstrom gets hurt? And then who are you riding with? Dustin Wolf and your E-Bug for obviously just that game, but then who's your next in line? You have to really think about these things. It's not necessarily an easy fix here, right? But why not get something for him in return while you can? Why not? It's a double-edged sword. And this is why I could never be a general manager, because I would either make the most fantastic moves, right? I'd be so thought out and methodical, and then other moves could just be so reactionary and impulsive that I would have the legacy of a Peter Chiarelli. I probably would. And that's, for those of you who may be new to this wonderful sport, that is not necessarily a good legacy to have. I do think that, again, the next general manager coming in here has a lot to take on. I think that they are kind of, just like with any general manager, their first year is kind of just spent cleaning up other people's messes. That's just the name of the game, really. So I do wonder if, the interviewers kind of asked, hey, you have to be familiar with our organization. Tell us what you would do in this situation. Maybe they're just looking for answers because they don't have them themselves. But I would love to see, in a perfect world, all three of them stay. I think that it's great to see Vladar getting his shot at the NHL and continuing to learn and, work his way to that starting role. And I do think that Dustin Wolf might need some more time. And I'm not saying that he has to sit down there and rot for another 55 games. Not that he's rotting. He's literally in the Calder Cup playoffs. But there has to be some level of believing in your confidence. That's the word I'm looking for. There has to be some level of confidence, because Markstrom could say, meh, I'm done. I'm tired. He would never. Or Dan Vladar could say, I'm not getting the time I can go start somewhere else. I could go make more money somewhere else. I could go start. I could be that guy for this organization or for that organization. The Flames could get a prospect in, I don't know, a second round draft pick. Could turn out to be something good. And that's the thing, is this is what's so frustrating about, oh, well, here are these prospects. here are these draft picks. Those draft picks could turn into a trade that turn into someone else that could end up being like just a fantastic hockey player, and you'll never live it down. But that's a different episode. But I think that the Flames do, again, have their work cut out for them. I hope that they have multiple departments segmented into teams and kind of strategizing, because this isn't necessarily something that will be solved overnight. It's going to have to come to someone in a dream. So thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. As always, I'm Jess Belmosto. You can follow the show on Twitter at LO_FlamesPod. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. You can follow me on Twitter at Jess Belmosto. And Nick will be here with you guys tomorrow because I am heading to Boston to see Taylor Swift. And I'm sure that he has something very exciting planned. He always has very not educational, but knowledgeable shows. So I look forward to that. I look forward to listening. And I will see you all on Monday, where we might have a better clue of who the Flames general manager will be.